Okay, wonderful. So, good morning, everyone. We are continuing from where we stopped last week. Last week, we began to discuss Heter Iska HaKlali. We didn't yet get to Heter Iska HaKlali, but we discussed the challenge it comes to deal with. And what is that challenge? The challenge is, how do we deal with a bank? Meaning, up until the modern era, we were talking about personal agreements between individuals. And the question it was, how could two individuals have an agreement that takes care of the prohibition of ribit? Meaning, so to basically overcome that prohibition by, in a way, we have an agreement where the one provides the capital and secures the principal plus a small return, but we do so without defining it as interest. How do we do it? So we saw the basic way to do it was to categorize it as an investment, not a loan. How do we do that? The capital provider is still seen as the owner of the capital because he is 100% responsible for it and its performance. However, we added a layer to the agreement, and that has to do with the way of the person handling the capital, the one who received the capital, was entrusted with it. How can he report and be trusted in regard to his report to the owner of the capital? So we saw he can report, he has to do it in a certain way, and he's trusted only under certain conditions, which make it very difficult for him to prove that the performance of the capital was different to a certain projection that they had to begin with. Meaning, what is the projection? So let's say I receive capital into my hands right now. So for example, let's say the average return on investment right now in the market is, let's say, for the sake of argument, 10% on if we take the average return on investment. So therefore, our projection is that the performance will be 10%. And now the capital owner, that is more or less what he wants in return. Let's say he gives the person that is dealing with it a certain percentage as well. So let's say he will be okay with only 8%. That will be enough, whatever it is. And now, if the return was less than 8%, it is very difficult for the one who was handling the capital to actually prove it. So that is a classic Heter Iska from the days of the Maharam until our days, and those were the classical agreements of Heter Iska. But now, what we saw last week came in the banks, and in the 19th century, I mean, banks we had way before the 19th century. But in the 19th century already, people are to have an account in a bank is an ordinary thing, savings account, and even those who are not part of a bank, they're part of what are called building societies or other sort of gatherings, corporations, where people put in their money, and others, or sometimes they take loans from this collective pot. But in any case, the question emerges, how do we do a Heter Iska under these conditions? Why? When we have two people, then we have two sides that are entering an agreement. Both of them are Jews who are Shomer Torah Mitzvot and therefore don't want to transgress Isur Ribit and therefore willingly enter into a Heter Iska agreement. That's wonderful. But when we're talking about a bank, some of the shareholders are Jewish, some of them are not Jewish. Some of the Jews are Shomer Torah Mitzvot, some of them are not Shomer Torah Mitzvot. Now, the shareholders who are Shomer Torah Mitzvot want to enter into a Heter Iska agreement, but even they, not with all lenders of the bank, only with the Jewish ones amongst them. Why? Because a Heter Iska agreement is still, it's not as legally exciting or strong as an ordinary loan agreement with a person. And also the clients, if a bank will tell all its clients, listen here, all the agreements are under a Heter Iska, some of them won't be happy. They don't want a Heter Iska, they want a loan. So how do you take care of such an agreement where you have many shareholders, you have many lenders of this body? Not everyone are interested in a Heter Iska. So what do you do? That was the question that emerged mid-19th century when all of a sudden you have all these banks. So we saw last week two sides of the two extremes of the two extreme answers. We had one of Reb Shlomo Gansfried, the Baal Kisur Shulchan Aruch, who paskin that indeed banks are a problem. You're not allowed to be a shareholder in a bank because some of the lenders are probably Jewish. You're not allowed to borrow money from a bank because some of the shareholders are probably Jewish. So in any case, whether you're a borrower or you are a shareholder of a bank, you are transgressing the prohibition of ribit, according to Rav Shlomo Gansfried. There is no solution to this. So all you can do is not have a bank account, and that's it. By the way, I just want to, as in brackets, there are Jews, Shomrei Torah Mitzvot today, that hold, like Reb Shlomo Gansfried, that you're not allowed to have a bank account. And they have an account only in Bank HaDoar. There is what is called in Israel Bank HaDoar. Bank HaDoar is every Israeli citizen, maybe not even citizens, maybe anyone living in Israel, has a right to open an account in Bank HaDoar, and that is part of the services that the government gives to its citizens under the post office is also banking services without interest, meaning money that you hold in such an account won't carry any interest, and you are not able to have any sort of overdraft in such an account. So also you won't have to pay the bank any interest. So, and that way, that's what they do, even in Israel. But we'll put that aside. That is the opinion of Reb Shlomo Gansfried. You cannot have a bank account, and you may not hold shares of any bank, or for that matter, of any company that takes a loan from the bank, because it's involved in interest. Okay. Then we had the very opposite opinion of the Shoel Umeishiv, Rav Yosef Shaul Natanson, the great posek of Galicia of the 19th century, who says, no, there is no problem with a bank. Where there's a problem of ribit, when an individual gives a loan to an individual, but in a bank, you take the loan from the bank. The bank has many shareholders. Now you can say, my loan, even if there weren't the Jewish shareholders, the bank would still give me the loan. So technically I could say I'm taking the loan from the non-Jewish shareholders. That is called yesh brera, and Yosef Shaul Natanson says we paskin in this way, that yesh brera, even according to even those who say that usually there is ein brera in such cases, and we won't get into the nitty-gritty, in such cases as this, yesh bera, and I could say I'm taking the loan from the non-Jewish shareholders. And if I'm a shareholder, I could say my money is going to the non-Jewish lenders of the bank, not to the Jewish lenders of the bank. The Jewish lenders are taking from the non-Jews, according to my, so I could say. And therefore, with a bank, there is no need for a heteriska. This is the Sholem Eishi. Now we are going to see someone in the middle. Who is in the middle? The Maharsham of Berjan. The Maharsham of Berjan is one of the great poskim also in Galicia, but in the entire of Europe, actually. And he, here, Shut Maharsham, there we go. Shut Maharsham, Chelek Aleph Siman Kaf. Reb Shlomo Mordechai Shvadron. There is the famous Yerushalmi Magid, Reb Shalom Mordechai Shvadron is the grandson of this Reb Shalom Mordechai Shvadron, also one of the great poskim in Galicia. In fact, after the death of Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, then the Maharsham becomes the posek for Europe. In fact, he was very he was a rav in a few places. One of them was Buchach, famous place where Shai Agnon, Shmuel Yosef Agnon, the great sofer, comes from and writes a lot about that town. He was a rav there. Then later he became a rav of greater cities, and yeah. So what does he say? So let's read what he writes. Just a minute. Okay. למחותני הרב המאור הגדול, מורנו ורבנו הרב פישל פלדמן. Okay, so he's writing to his mechutan, and who asked him a question about this is a building society. So ועל דבר מכתבו הגיעני ועל דבר שאלתו שנשתתפו רבים מהגליל לעשות להם שפר credit כסה. Okay, that's what we would call today a building society. והם לעת עתה כולם ישראלים. Okay, now in that case they were all Jewish. זולת גוי אחד שנותן גם כן איזו סך לשותפות החבורה. But there was one non-Jew in that building society. Okay, והמנהיג הוא גם כן יהודי. Okay, the manhig here is the director is also Jewish. Okay, now, so he brings the Sholem Eshiv. Maybe is it allowed? Would he say it even in such a case? I think it was who asked last week. Someone asked last week, would the Sholem Eshiv say it even in the case where there are not enough non-Jews or as either as lenders or as shareholders, depend on what side of the equation I am. So this was the question that he was asked. But in any case, he goes back and forth. But his bottom line is that he doesn't like the Sholem Eshiv. He doesn't agree with the Sholem Eshiv. He says that's not true. He thinks that even in that in such a case you cannot say yesh vera and all that thing. So what does he say? So he suggests the following. First of all, the one who asked him the question quotes an interesting psak of the Leket HaKemach. This is Rabbi Moshe Chagiz, a 16th century Sephardi rabbi, who was posek that in a case where you have the case he was discussing was a case where a community, a congregation wanted to take a loan from one of its members. Now, those days, a congregation, we're not talking about, a shul doesn't have members per se. If you were, because in an ordinary shul, you had those who were of means. Usually, it was I don't know 5, 6, 7 people, and then you had the rest who weren't people of means. So let's say who runs the congregation are the people of means. So the people of means, they run the congregation, and let's say there are 7 of them, and they need a loan in order to refurbish the shul. Okay, so they want to take a loan. Now, one of them is willing to give of his private estate a loan to the congregation, but he wants interest. So says Reb Moshe Chagiz, that is allowed. Why? Because he says, who is giving the money? He is. Who's taking the money? He is. Okay, with a few others, that's true. But as long as one of this, he is on both sides of the equation, he's also the lender and the borrower. He's the creditor and the debtor. He's the lender and the borrower. Then ribit here is not prohibited. Why? Because ribit is prohibited where you have 2 different people and only 2 different people on both sides of the deal, because then you have a noges and nigas. But he says here you don't have a noges and nigas, because whatever he goes after them, he's going also after himself. So because he is involved in the other side as well, there is no noges and nigas here, and in that case, ribit will be allowed. So what the person asking the question is suggesting, is saying in a building society, unlike a bank, but a building society is sort of a cooperation where all members of the building society put money into the building society, and that allows them to take loans from the building society. Outside members are not able to take loans. Only the members that put their money into that invest in the building society are able to take loans. So he's saying any lender, by definition, any borrower, by definition, is also part of the building society, is also one of the lenders. So he's on both sides of the equation. So by definition, you have the situation which Leket Takemach, Rav Moshe Chagiz spoke about, and which will be allowed. That was his suggestion. So the Maharsham discusses this. Bottom line, the Maharsham disagrees with Rav Moshe Chagiz. However, even if he would agree with him, that would have helped us in such a case as a building society. But in a classic bank where you have the shareholders and the lenders and the borrowers are not necessarily the same people, it wouldn't help. So what do you do then? So here the Maharsham suggests what he suggests. ובגוף הדין, הנה זה איזו שנים, כשנתייסד בנק פה בקהילתנו הקדושה. עשיתי עם הממונים שטר בבית דין, וחתמו עליו בחיוב המועיל, שכל ההלוואות יהיו על צד היתר עסקה, ואם לא ירוויח הלווה, יחזירו לו גם העסקה שלוקחים מקודם. ואחרי זה הכרזתי כן בכל ביתי הכנסת וביתי המדרש לפרסם הדבר. וגם כל מעשה בית דין יש לו קול, כמו שכתב המרדכי, etc. וממילא הבלי כהתנה כן בפירוש בשטר הלוואה, ויש שטר בבית דין. Okay. Here, the Maharam is saying the following. He's saying like this. He says, you're not going to make an agreement with each and every borrower. Okay. But what could be possible is to make an announcement, to make a halachically legal announcement saying that all business that I do in the bank could be all business that I do generally, meaning the person who's a shareholder in the bank makes an announcement that all business that he does is under heter iska. Now, but that the other person who's on the other side of the agreement says, I don't care that you made such an announcement. I didn't know about it. It wasn't an agreement with me. It was your announcement. So here there is that general halacha. And this halacha has two stages. The one halacha is, let's say we sign an agreement. We have a signed document. And later on, we have an argument regarding some case. And you take out the document and you say, look, what you say, according to the signed document, I am right. And I say, you know something, you're right. But in addition to the signed document, we had a verbal agreement that contradicts this document. And you agreed in that verbal agreement to what I'm claiming. And I have two witnesses to bring to that effect. Then the halacha is that those two witnesses are listened to, meaning a written document where I claim there is a verbal agreement and I'm able to prove that there was such a verbal agreement, then it doesn't matter that there is a contradicting document. The verbal agreement that was before the written document overrides the written document because the written document doesn't say that the verbal agreement was not true. The verbal agreement, and in the verbal agreement, we said that this is going to override any other agreement that we may have. Okay, so that is one halacha. Now, on top of that, there is another halacha, and that is that if I go and announce something in Beit Din, then that announcement, once it becomes public knowledge, then anyone that does anything with me, I could claim that announcement was known before any agreement. Let's say I announce that I make it public knowledge that that Reuven is a partner in all of my dealings. And then I go and I sign an agreement with a friend of mine. And then he tells me, look, the agreement I signed with you, I didn't sign with Reuven. And I say, you're right. But before that, it was public knowledge that Reuven is a partner of mine. So when you signed the agreement with me, you signed it under that public knowledge, under that, you cannot argue that you didn't know what was out there, what everyone out there knew. Okay. And then the halakha discusses, there are certain discussions, what makes something into public knowledge. Okay. So this is what he's talking about. He says, let's make it public knowledge that all dealings that I do are under heter iska. And I announce it in shul every, a few weeks in a row. We announce it in shul, and we make a written statement by the Beit Din of the town, and take certain steps to make it public knowledge that dealings of so and so on are under heter iska. So what the Marsham argues, that in and of itself is enough. Now he doesn't have to sign a heter iska with any of his business colleagues, because he made a general statement that is so, and he made it known. They made it public knowledge that is so. So anyone who enters into an agreement with him should know that it is under that caveat, that it is under heter iska. And what allows it? So there are two things here. A, the heter iska, even though it's not part of the written agreement, we say a written agreement cannot override a previous agreement that stated that it will override any written agreement. That is A. And B, it doesn't have to be an agreement. It could be public knowledge, meaning the fact that everyone knows that my business is conducted in this way. It's like a company that does that. An analogy would be I sign an agreement with the bank. Okay. Now, today, usually you make an agreement with a bank, it makes you sign that you know it's according to its bylaws. Let's say you didn't sign this according to its bylaws. Of course, you know that any institution has bylaws, and whatever agreement it makes with you is according to its bylaws. That's for sure. So that is here. Okay, so I'm a person. I also have my bylaws. I announced them in Beit Din. I announced it in Shul. Everyone knows that that is my that these are the conditions under which I make business. So says the Maharsham, this will be your heter iska. It's not an agreement that you did with a business colleague. It's not an agreement, but it is a general statement that all your business is under these conditions, and it is public knowledge. And since it is public knowledge, anyone you'd make an agreement with is under these conditions. Okay, it makes sense. Are we all in agreement?
Okay. Yeah, I just can't figure out. I can't understand why. If I have a private agreement, you and I have a private agreement that one, and just because we announced in Shul that you and I are now partners, are partners, but then I go ahead and make an agreement with Ruvain that Ruvain is partners with you. Ruben doesn't want to be partners with you, and it doesn't say.
No, it's not that. It's an example I gave, but what I meant by the example is this. If I have an agreement with Ruben that all my businesses are in partnership with it, all my business, and then I go and I enter into an agreement with you, whether a partnership or another type of an agreement, then Reuven can come and say, just a minute, you promised me, and you cannot say, well, who are you, Reuven? I don't know you, because he says, of course you know me. You made an agreement with Hanan, and Hanan and me are partners, and it's public knowledge that we're partners. Everyone knows we're partners. So therefore, you made an agreement with me too. Something along those. It's an example. We could think of other examples,
but then why wouldn't I make an agreement with you, and Reuven comes along and does exactly what you said? Why wouldn't you be responsible for not having put the fact into the contract that you and Reuven are partners?
So here the halacha says that, well, we don't always not if whether I did or I didn't. Obviously, it wasn't. It would have been better that I would put it in, but maybe I forgot. Maybe on purpose I didn't do it. Maybe I whatever it is. But my agreement with Reuven is binding, and since it was public knowledge, meaning you cannot claim you didn't know about it because it was done in such a way. Meaning, if me and Reuven have a secret agreement and you had no idea, then you say, "Look, you and Reuven's agreements, I don't care about. I didn't know about it. I don't. It's not about." But if my agreement with Reuven was public knowledge, and here we have to get into what public knowledge is, meaning we announced it all over, it was on the billboards all over, everyone knows that Microsoft and Apple are now partners or whatever. So then you cannot claim I didn't know. Everyone knew it. It was in the papers. It was so that's basically what he's saying. Okay. So this is what is called heter iska haklali. So now we have the middle ground. Until now we had two extremes. We have Rav Shlomo Ganstrid who says banks are a problem and there is no solution. We have the Shalom Meshiv who says no, there is no problem with a bank. It's allowed altogether. And we have the Maharsham who says no, there's a challenge, but there is a solution. The solution is Heter Iska Haklali. And this is basically what we do today. Today you come into the bank, you have an agreement with the bank. The agreement talks about a loan, about interest, but there is an overriding agreement to it. And that is that when you come into the bank, you have a big, it's on the wall of the bank, a big Heter Iska thing, and it says, all agreements that we do are subjected to Heter Iska, meaning even though it says it uses the language of loan and the phrase and interest, no, what we actually mean, it is subjected to Heter Iska. Okay, so that is what we do today, and I'll say a few more words about it, but next week. But before we get to that, I want to get to another way, another opinion. The fourth opinion is similar to the Sholem Meshiv, saying there is no problem, but for a different reason. Yeah, we would be able to start it, but not see the whole argument this week. But we'll start the argument this week, and that is the first one who argued in that direction was Maharia Halevi. Now it's interesting. Just a minute. What's so fascinating is that all these poskim, all are Galicianers. And this is really something because I come from a Galicianer family. And I remember as a child, I was always uncomfortable being from a Galicianer family because everyone always makes jokes about Galicianers. Yes, I have some Lithuanian heritage. So I always used to try and say, well, there is something Lithuanian there as well. But today, once I really, all the great poskim of the 19th century, nearly all of them were Galicianers. So we're on good grounds, even being Galicianers. Okay, now that I said we could continue. So Maharia Halevi, who was Maharia Halevi? Reb Yitzchak Aaron Ettinger was one of the great poskim of the 19th century, of the late 19th century. He was very wealthy himself. By the way, the Maharsham, both Maharsham and Maharia Halevi, they weren't only rabbis, they were also businessmen. The Maharsham, Rav Shalom Mordechai Shvadron, before he became a Rav, he was a businessman. He was a merchant. He dealt mainly with wine, with lumber, with commodity merchant. He was very wealthy, and at a certain point, he became a Rav. But so too, Maharia Halevi was also. Aaron Ettinger was very wealthy himself, and he also so we're countrymen, or Fred. That's wonderful. So he was also very, very wealthy. So they knew what they were talking about when they put together these different Heter Iskas and other things. And Maharia Halevi, this is what he said. He says, I won't read it inside. I'll just say his argument without reading it inside, but we'll then expand on it next week. What he said is like this. He says, you are not allowed to enter into an agreement with any Jew where on the one hand you have a lender and on the other hand you have a borrower. He says, when they're Jewish shareholders of a bank on the one hand, and lenders of the bank on the other hand, in no way is there a lender-borrower relationship between the shareholders of the bank and the borrowers of the bank. He says the shareholders of the bank cannot come and sue you and claim that you owe them money. You don't owe them money. You owe the bank money. And the bank okay. So he says, who do you owe money in the bank? Do you own the director? No, the director you don't. Now, it's not. So what do you say? So what do you want to say? Oh, maybe the bank is the shaliach. Yes, the shaliach is the agent of the shareholders, and therefore they are liable. So no, because he says that also because in halacha, shaliach, an agent, is someone who is working under the instructions of someone who sent him. He said here the director of the bank, definitely the employees of the bank, they're not in any way under the directive of the shareholders. Their goal is to maximize profit for the shareholder according to their understanding, not according to what the shareholders tell them to do. So he says, since the shareholders cannot, he says, the shareholder doesn't tell me, I want you to give the loan to him yes, to him not. It's the bank decides its policy without the shareholder, without knowledge of the shareholders. So he says, I cannot say that the bank is the shaliach, the agent of the shareholders. It's something else. And therefore he says, when you take a loan from the bank, you're not taking it from the shareholders. And when the shareholders put money in the bank, they're not giving loans to anyone. They're putting it in the bank. And even the director of the bank is not giving a loan because it's not his money that he's giving as a loan. So he himself, because when you owe the bank money, you don't own the director of the bank money or the cashier of the bank money or any individual who was involved in this transaction. Okay. So some would say that what what the Maria Levi is talking here about is what we talk about limited ishiyut mishpatit. How do you say ishiyut mishpatit in English? I forgot. Let me check. No. Legal person. No, it's not legal person. Virtual. Okay, it's the. Just a minute. Legal entity. Thank you, Elon. So, according to secular law, the bank is seen, or a company. A company is a legal entity. It's a legal entity which is it's without being so. So I don't owe a person money. I owe the bank money. I owe. So that is the. So what Maria Levi is saying here is almost that, but not quite. What he is saying, he's saying is this claim of a legal entity. That is something that Rabbi Asher Weiss holds, but we will get to that next week. But he's not. Maria Levi is not saying that, but he's nearly touching it. What he's saying, all that he's saying is that in some magical way we managed to construct a loan here where there is no relationship between the lender and between a lender person, a person who's a lender, and a person who's a borrower. We managed to do that in some mysterious way. And since that is the situation here, and whichever way we look at it, that is the situation, then there is no problem of ribit here, because the ribit is the problem of ribit is when a Jew needs to pay ribit to another Jew, but that is not the situation here. And since that is not the situation here, there is no issue of ribit here. That is what Maria Levi says. And next week we'll see one step forward that the Rogachover did, and then another step forward which Rabbi Asher Weiss did, and then we'll get into a feisty discussion of how we bring all that, how Lemaisa, what that means to us. So I'll summarize what we saw today. So today we added on the two opinions that we saw last week in regard to a bank. We saw the one opinion of Reb Shlomo Gansfried: a bank is a problem, there's nothing you could do about it. The opposite opinion, Rabbi Yosef Shaul Natanson, who said, no, a bank is not a problem at all, you don't have to do anything about it. We saw the middle grounds today, the Maharsham, Reb Shalom Mordechai Shvadron, who says, no, a bank is a problem, but there is a solution. What is the solution? Instead of an agreement, a personal agreement, you have a general statement that all your business is conducted under Heter Iska, and you do it in such a way that it's considered halachically as public knowledge. And since it is such, anyone who enters into a business agreement with you has to know that it's under that caveat of Heter Iska. Okay, that's the Maharsham. And then we saw another opinion of Maharia Levi, who is technically like the Shulchan Meshiv says, no, a bank is not a problem, but not because of Breira, what we said, but for another reason. He says in an agreement that in a loan that you take from a bank, or an investment that you make to a bank, you are not, when you make the investment, you're not a lender, and when you take a loan, you're not a borrower of a specific person, and therefore there is not a problem of ribit here. We will pick up from here next week, and if there are any questions, then please go ahead. Okay, so we'll take a break now, and we'll reconvene in 15 minutes at 12 o'clock.